I don't know why. There we go. So formally putting it all together, this is what we're going to be doing today. Okay. That's me. We know who I am by now. So we're going to do some pattern games. We're going to throw it all together, and then we're going to talk about your bonus. Question for you guys to drop in the chat. Yesterday, we talked about slowing it down before you go out for a walk. How many of you tried that? And how did it go? Ish? What did you try? Tell me what you tried. If you tried to slow things down, what did you try? A touch and a paw before going out the door, sit before going out the door. Cool. Place training, awesome. Sit at the door before we go out, lock up, add a few more things in and out. Yeah, went amazing, worked on the door. Closing the door if he charges. I like that. I like to teach dogs to not charge out the door, not because I'm the leader or I'm the alpha, because I don't subscribe to that. That's not a thing. But it's not safe to be charging out the door, right? It's not safe to be charging out of a gate. So if the door is open, that doesn't mean you can go out, right? Okay, scatter food. I like that. Yeah. And we're going to actually be talking about scatter food today in a little bit. Went well until the neighbor's reactive dog started barking. Well, that's the reactive dog's fault. It's not your dog's fault. So we're just going to end with it went well. Okay, thank you guys. So keep trying that and see what else you can do. Do stuff before you open the door and do stuff immediately after you go out the door. Okay, then do stuff like in your driveway if you have one, or 15 feet from wherever you come out of from your place. Okay, and then periodically work that in. So you might walk a block and then do a little bit more, and then walk a little bit more, and then do a little bit more. Okay. Okay, so everybody remembers red, yellow, green, or if you prefer the beach analogy. And working at your dog's pace. I think I actually want a t-shirt or a tattoo. It's that for training, like working at your dog's pace, especially with reactive dogs, is super, super important. Okay, nobody wants to be taught by somebody who's like pushing you through, doesn't explain things, doesn't make their expectations clear, but still has those expectations, right? What happens is you get frustrated with your dog and your dog gets frustrated with you. They're not going to want to train with you. And for reactive dogs, you're not going to be getting that positive association because you're not working at their pace. Okay. I like that. Cue and turn around. Okay, so pattern games. Pattern games were developed by Leslie McDevitt. She has a whole program called Control Unleash, which I love. And the reason that we use patterns, much like we do with children, is that they're structured, they're predictable, they're repeatable. They're simple rhythmic behaviors, so they're easy for you to remember. They're easy for you to learn. They're easy for you to remember. And once your dogs learn them, they're fun to play because they're predictable. They know what to do. They know what's coming next. And so that's why we use pattern games as a way to give our dogs safety and structure and to share with them what our expectations are while still having fun. Okay? It's different than being out in a walk and going, okay, sit, okay, down. Your dog never knows what's coming, right? And so trying to get their focus on that is much, much harder than if you're playing a super fun game that you've taught them is super reinforcing and then using it for other things. So whiplash turns we did yesterday. Up and down we're going to do today. Scatter feed we're going to talk about today. The other three in the right-hand column, give me a break, look at that, and the 1, 2, 3 game are techniques that I teach, games that I teach in the full program, but just give you a kind of an idea of what that looks like. Okay. And the nice thing about them is that they are fun. You guys played the game, the whiplash turn game with your dog yesterday, which is the first step. We're going to do the second step today. Did your dogs have fun? Were they having a good time? Did they know that you were trying to teach them to do something? They were just like, I'll follow you anywhere. Do whatever you say. Because they're having fun. And it's a much nicer way. So you see a trigger coming, you know you have to get a dodge. It's a much more fun way. She had no idea. She liked it, right? So it's a much more fun way to get your dogs to engage with you and do something as opposed to you standing there at the end of the leash and let's come on, look at me. Let's go. They're like, oh, okay, we're gonna have fun. So teaching your dog that turning around is fun. Because when a dog is confronted by something super exciting or something that scares them, the last thing they want to do is turn around. They're not wired for that. They're going to turn around if they're in flight, right? So we have to teach them that turning around is fun and that they can choose that instead. So, and there are 72 people, not 100 people, so maybe it will play because the last one played. Maybe not. So teaching your dog to move away. I wonder if I can scrub it. I love technology. 2 minutes ago, a video played. This one won't play. Sure. But I actually can show you guys instead. So what you did with Whiplash Turn is and I have my treat pups today. Okay. So what we did with Whiplash Turn is we put, my dog is sleeping. This is my dog. Okay. This is the butt. This is the head. Okay. For Whiplash Turn, we took, yeah, let's do this. For Whiplash Turn, we put a treat down at the head. And then you moved around behind your dog. As they turned around, you put a treat down at the tail. Then you came back and you put a treat down at the head and you put a treat down at the tail. Now, obviously, so the next step of teaching your dog to move away, obviously you're not going to be putting a treat down in front of them necessarily if what you really want them to do is move. But teaching them this game gets them going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth fast. It teaches them how to do that fast. When you're doing it in real life, and for those of you who were in my class that was at 6, you saw Logan work and he was happy. And then I tried to get him to come to this class and he was like, see you, goodbye. So we got just enough out of him, but I like to do this. So bear with me. It's a nice thing to have a 9-foot leash so you can tie it to things. Okay, so this is my dog. He's going to go over there. I'm going to spin my camera around. You guys can see the dog? Okay. All right. So your dog is out here. And what most people do, you guys can't see my head, but that's okay. What most people do when they want their dog to turn around is, this is why I wanted to be in a meeting room, but I can't do that today. Most people want their dogs to turn around and they, come on, let's go. Let's go. Come on, let's go. Right? If you've taught your dog that it's fun to turn around, you get them out here. And this dog is not, okay, this dog is not, it's going to be yanked off his feet if it was a real dog, but just like bear with me here, right? So you're going to get closer to your dog. And you guys had introduced the word turn or let's go. Some of you already used let's go. Some of you were introducing the word turn. You stand closer to your dog. You've got that thumb lock. You've got this, you slide your hand closer down and you use the game. Okay, just pretend the dog is following me. Okay. So you're here, and instead of standing all the way out here, you're going to get closer. And lead your dog away. Once your dog has been led away, you drop the treat on the ground. Okay, because that's the rhythm that they're used to. Turn, drop the treat on the ground. Turn, drop the treat on the ground. Does that make sense? Mostly? A little bit? Okay. So you guys are all going to try this without a leash. Okay. So you're going to grab treats and dog. You're going to put a treat down in front of your dog's nose. You're going to say turn, and as your dog turns towards you, you are going to take a couple of steps backwards in a fun, energetic kind of way. And I am going to spotlight Meadow And I'm going to spotlight, if it's okay, I'm going to spotlight Scarlet. Okay. And I'm going to spotlight Lizard. So make sure that you're adding your backwards movement to your turn. Yes, Sheila, I've spotlighted you. Okay. So treat down when you reward. Okay. Turn. Your dog should be happy to follow you. We want happy, fun doggies. Okay. 3 more times, guys. And then come back to the camera. Okay. Lucy is already turning on cue without the treat being dropped, which is perfect. That's what you want. Do you guys see the rhythm in that? Turn, move away, treat drops. Turn, move away, treat drops. Your dogs know turn means turn, follow you, drop the treat. If your dog eats way too slow, you're going to use a tinier treat. That's definitely one of the things you want to be mindful of when you're doing a lot of training. And if you're training for reactivity, you want the treats to be something that they can get down the mouth, down the hatch fast. It doesn't have to be your gourmet thing. Okay, so you want like little tiny treat. And tiny, if you have a 40-pound and up dog, tiny is that big. Okay, the top of that. Right, like the top of a pencil eraser. If you're me and you've got people's dogs and you're training them all the time and you don't want to send them home like 50 pounds heavier, are people familiar with Zooks? Like those 3-calorie little soft treats? I can turn those into 4 treats. Okay, so that's how tiny things can be.
Katja, you're not spotlighted, by the way.
I'm not? Okay. Thank you. You can put me into speaker view on your end instead of gallery view. Okay. All right. Okay, so the next one is going to be your scatter game. Okay. So a scatter game is really what it sounds like. You're walking along, this is much more of a distraction technique. Okay. It's okay, we need to put your dog's focus elsewhere, and it's take a bunch of treats and scatter them on the ground. As you're scattering them on the ground, it's find it. Yuka, I don't see. Yeah, there we go. Not that we don't want to see Yuka, but okay. So scatter treat, right? This is going to be tricky for those of you who have taught your dogs that if a treat goes on the ground, you can't touch it. Right? So just know that they're going to be like, sit, and they're going to stare at you. One of the reasons we use scatter treat is to bring your dog's focus down, away from the other dog. This is definitely a distraction thing, but you can also use the food to move you and your dog away, because if they're engaged with the food, they're going to follow it, right? So to teach your dog that game, they're going to have the time of their lives right now. You're going to take your dog's food, you're going to show them the treat. You're going to toss it and say, find it, because we want find it to be the cue. Okay. Find it means put your head down and go look for something. Okay. So try that. If you have a dog who's like, I must only sit to get my treat, you're going to put that treat on the ground first and like make it super exciting and make it like dance around and then fling it. Okay. So your scatter game, give that a try. Your dogs are going to have some fun. Get them chasing things. I got a lovely email this morning from somebody who had been trying some of the games and playing more of them with her dog and noticing that her dog on walks was actually checking in with her a little bit more often, which, yep, Evie, just toss it. Toss the treat. Okay. After you've done 3 repeats of tossing it, you're going to toss, say, find it, and move with your dog. So you're tossing in the direction that you want your dog to move in. I mean, your house doesn't really matter, but if you're outside, toss it and move with your dog. So find it and move with your dog. Find it and move with your dog. So turn is used to turn your dog around, right? Find it is getting them moving at a rapid pace, ideally, depending on the dog, at a rapid pace in the direction that you want, so that you are not pulling them, right? It's much easier to work with a dog who wants to be cooperative and move with you, especially if they're like big. Although when the little ones hold their ground, it's really something still. Toss, find it, move with your dog. Because again, when we're on walks, we have taught our dogs that we go in one direction only, and that's forward. So if you can get them used to moving in other ways, by playing games with them, A, they're going to love it, and B, you can use it for other things. Okay, come on back to the camera. We're going to do this last game. And then we're going to add harness and collar, or actually just harness ideally, and leash. All right, because that's a whole nother level of coordination. So the great thing about Leslie McDevitt's pattern games is that they're easy for you guys to remember, right? They don't have a million steps. It doesn't require like a high degree of compliance or anything like that. It's just games. And typically in each of the games, you only have to remember 1 or 2 things. So everything else that we've done so far is 1 thing. This one is 2 things. Now it sounds simple. Why do we use the up and down game? We use the up and down game to move our dog's head up and up and down and up and down. And why do we do that? We play this game to break our dogs from being fixated on something. If their head is moving up and down, they're not staring another dog down. If their head is moving up and down, it's much more relaxed than if their neck is stiff and staring at something. So to break focus, and we're going to go back to like the rules of the games later, to break focus or to have them like you just notice, right? So this is before they're fixated. Sometimes if your dog is over threshold again, you're not going to be able to just suddenly do this, right? But you want to get them used to up and down, right? This doesn't need a cue. It's not something where you're going to say to your dog, go up and down. They're not, we're not teaching them to nod. So it's going to have food involved all the time. Break their focus, head goes down, you get relaxing chewing, and we talked about why physiologically that's calming. They look up, and because you have food, yes, because you have food, they're naturally going to look up at you and down. And you can do that as many times until you get them refocused on you so that you can get them to then turn or do something else, right? This is a nice game to use. And again, your dog you're working at your dog's pace, right? So you're applying this when you have a reasonable chance of knowing it's going to be successful, to use when you're stuck. So this is a nice game to use when you have nowhere to move, but you need to keep your dog engaged. So logically speaking, you're not going to do the up and down game with your dog beside you because they're still looking out, right? They're still looking out. So if I was going to play this game, I would face my dog and do up and down. Okay. So it sounds silly, but I'm going to get you guys to do up and down with your dog, and you don't put the treat down until their head is all the way up. Okay. So again, you're going to turn, face your dog, Up, down, up, and down. I'm not sharing the screen anymore. Down is a treat on the floor. Yeah. You don't say down, just put a treat on the floor. Kira, if you already use find it for the other thing, choose a different word. If your dogs lie down when you're putting the treat on the floor, drop the treat. Because some of your dogs are taking the hand to the floor as a cue. So just make that a little bit more subtle and drop the treat on the floor. There you go. And your dogs will typically stand up to get them because they have to. Physics. Okay. Up and down. If your dog is lying down and taking the treats, give it a toss so that they stand up. Nice. Okay, up and down. Do 2 more and then go and grab your dog's harnesses and their leashes, please. No, Evie, I don't want him to lie all the way down because this is, going to be in a reactivity situation. Just his head follows the treat. So if your dog is lying all the way down, it's likely because they're following your hand all the way down. So you're just going to drop the treat instead. And Ruby is relaxing, and that is okay. Okay, so harnesses go on. However, your dogs are comfortable. Yet Chester has a sore, so yet use a collar. And get your leashes. Mary, does Dottie have reindeer horns on? It's okay. It was cute. Okay, so everyone's getting their leashes and their harnesses on. Dogs are like, why don't, okay, we're going outside now. Okay. Poo bags tied to her harness. Okay, I thought you were like practicing for Halloween or something. Okay, so some of you have got nice long leashes and that's cool, but I'm going to get you guys to show me how you hold your leashes as of yesterday. Nice. I see lots of thumbs. Okay. For those of you with longer leashes, I'm going to get you to take up some of that slack. So put 2 loops over your handle hand, over your handle thumb. Perfect. Okay. Because it's going to be a little bit hard for some of you to kind of manage that length and get your dogs around at the same time. So I'm going to walk you guys through one at a time. There's a few of you on the screen, but so I'm going to give like a third of you feedback at a time and then a third of you feedback at the time, and then we'll continue. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is your whiplash turn. So I want you guys one at a time, just wait till I sort of talk you through it. Get your dogs standing, and you're going to stand in front of them, facing them. Okay, so everybody is standing in front of their dog, facing them. Treat goes down on the floor. Just drop it so they don't lie down. Treat goes down on the floor, and then you move around immediately behind them. Move, 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 as their heads turn around. Nice, Susan. So if your dog sits, that is okay. Put a treat down. Right, get around behind them. This is about you moving faster than they do right now. Treat down, turn. Be mindful of keeping your leash slack so we're not pulling them. Our leashes are loose. Nice, Emily. Okay. iPhone 3 at Anne, I can see more of your ceiling than I can of your dog, which is okay. But if you want me to give you feedback, I need to be able to see you. Okay. So 3 more repeats. I see, Hannah, you're adding in some movement backwards, which is perfect. Keep doing that. Okay, so your next step, guys, nice whiplash turns with everybody. Your next step is treat goes down, you move behind your dog, you say turn, and you start to move backwards so they follow you. Once they've followed you and they're in front of you, the treat goes down again. So from the top, you're in front of your dogs. Treat goes, okay, we're going to get everyone to reset. So everybody just come back to like a neutral position, standing in front of your dogs. If Meadow wants a break, that's okay. Okay, with everybody standing, neutral position, leashes in hand, ideally in 2 hands, if you can do it. Treat goes down on the floor. Move behind your dogs when their heads start to turn. You say turn and you start moving. Most of you are moving naturally. Okay. Your dogs are going to follow you. Treat on the floor. Move behind your dog. Turn. Make sure you're watching your dog when you go to stand behind them so that you capture that head turn. Okay, Bonnie, nice. Moving behind quickly, quickly, quickly. Turn. Nice. And move away again. Turn. For a few of you, if it's comfortable for you, because you can get a little bit dizzy, so be careful, okay? If it's comfortable for you, I want you to start moving behind your dogs as they're eating the treat. You don't need to wait for them. Okay, so as they're eating the treat, you are moving so that you're already there and you can say turn and they're anchored. Okay. One last one and then come back to a neutral position where you're standing in front of your dogs. Emily, good job. Allison, that's nice. And Cheryl, I think you have your background blurred. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I know that the screen, okay, that's Rachel. I can't see a head, so I'm not sure if it's Rachel or Mark, but it's just the legs. It's perfect. Good job. Okay, so come back to neutral in front of your dogs. And then it's going to be up and down. So up, they're looking at you because they're already looking at you. Treat goes down. Wait till they look up. Hands are empty. Okay, so I'm going to add this caveat for you guys. Wait till your dog looks up, take the treat out of your hand, then out of your treat pouch, and then put it down. But your hands need to be empty. Because if your hands have food in it, your dog may just stare at your hands, which defeats the purpose of getting them moving and their neck a bit more relaxed. So your dog looks up. You are standing stationary in front of your dog. You're not, humans are not moving. Okay. Stationary in front of your dog, treat goes down. Head comes up, treat goes down. Head comes up. One of your homework pieces for, if you so desire, will be to do this in front of a window where there's distractions, then do it on your front steps, then do it in your driveway. And what that will tell you is how under threshold your dogs are or not. If they can't follow food up and down, then they're already over threshold. Okay. So it can be a good kind of game to play to get them engaged with you or to give you the information that they're not there. Nobody's home. It's also true that if you are using food typically to train, that with reactivity, you generally need something that's just a little higher volume. Okay. Couple of questions on this. So is it okay to mark when they look up and then treat? I would skip the mark. Okay, I would just use the treat. And the reason that we're skipping the mark is because there's no right or wrong. You want necks moving. Because if you mark when they look up, then what you're marking is the looking up. Like they have already looked, right? Not the movement. Hey. Okay. With this one, are they only getting the treat on the ground? Yes. If you don't want your dog getting treats off the ground, then you can keep it in your hand. Okay. Okay. Do you place the food or toss? I like to, if you're able to, I like to place the food because if you toss and it rolls, then they're not in front of you anymore. But also then you have a dog that starts looking for treats, which might not be what you want because you're using this when you're stuck. So you want them with you all the way. So I would place it, right? If you're frustrated because your dog has Zippo interest in food, that's something that would actually kind of work on. It's something that I'm familiar with because my dog is not terribly interested in food. You can still train and you can still build that, but it takes a little bit of time. Okay. Can you go over what, okay, all I have, other people would be, wishing they had your problem, Fred. Fred has a floor covered in food and a dog who's looking at him. So your dog has been like a cue to like look at you. But you can build on that. There's actually some parallels to dogs who are stressed out and aren't really interested, or some dogs need to learn that eating food is part of the process. Okay. Can you go over what you do with the treat hand? Can you hold it above and then drop? So again, your treat hand in this case, I'm going to look for a calmer placement of a treat. So if you're standing up here and you drop your treat, there's no telling where it's going to land. So if we're using this game when we are stuck, there's something behind me, there's something coming this way, there's something, we need to be able to control it. So it's going to be your treat hand. And if you're able to as close to placing it as you can. You can also just, if you need it to be in your hand and you don't want to put it on the ground, or it's not comfortable to put it on the ground, then just have your hand go below their chin as much as you can. Okay. Anne is suggesting tiny pieces, tiny pieces of sliced hot dog that have been heated up slightly in the microwave. Yes, for most dogs, that's gold. All right. Mary, I'm going to talk about training when your dog is hungry a little bit later. Okay. So 3 games, all of your dogs are probably like, stop moving, please. If you want to unhook their leashes for now, that's fine. They can be off duty. Okay. Give them some loving. The side tip I'm going to say to hot dogs is the fewer the additives, the better. If you take a bite of said hot dog and it's a bit salty, soak it in water. Soak it in water, let it sit for hours, it seems, until that water is salty. Okay, for some brands, you have to do that often. So depending on the size of your dog, all hot dog pieces should be tiny, but you just be careful of how much you feed them. Okay, now we're into the planning piece of the evening. And so candles for the triggers, the map of your walk, you get a dog. When you have a reactive dog, I know that you guys probably walk around like vigilantes, right? Scanning for everything. And I'm not going to say not to do that, but what's really helpful, and that is a very cuddly puppy, Steve. What's really, really helpful is having a plan. And so one of the reasons I like these games is, so you guys have learned like 4 games already, is that they are easy for you to remember and work into a plan, as opposed to going out on the street and going, what do I do when now? I'm not sure. And then there's a panic, and then there's an outburst, and then everybody feels lousy, right? So plan A, B, and C is probably enough, but if you like more plans, that's fine too. What goes into your plan depends on where you are. So most of us typically will be walking in the same place at least 3 times a week, probably more. So you have a pretty good idea of the lay of the land, where the reactive dog is, whether it's garbage day, whether there's usually a cat that comes flying out of the corner. That's a different training thing. You can train dogs to not yank your arms out when they see a cat. But you generally have a general idea of what that might look like. So we're going to do a little bit of what your plan in your head might look like. And just because you have a plan doesn't mean you can't change it, but it helps to have, just like for our dogs, some predictability about how this is all going to come together when you're out on the road, right? So you're not going, I don't know what to do when, I'm not sure. So if the goal of meeting your dog's needs when they're a reactive dog is to reduce the severity and frequency of your dog's outbursts. Okay, so notice I'm not saying fix them, because there's nothing wrong with them. Okay, I'm not saying that we're going to solve the problem. But if your long-term goal is to reduce the severity and frequency of your dog's outbursts, whether it's in a given week or over the course of a couple of months, over the course of a couple of years. Every dog is going to progress differently through that. Based on that goal, you can decide a couple of things. Your decision making is based on your goal being keeping your dog under threshold. The more often your dog is under threshold, the less often they're going to react. Does that make sense? Right. Okay. So keeping our dogs under threshold involves giving them, and this is true whether you have an overexcited greeter or whether you have a fearful, anxious dog. So distance. And it's not the distance that you think is enough. And I know I sound like a broken record, but it's not the distance that you think it's enough. It's, by now, you guys know your dogs more than anybody else. You know by now if across the street is far enough. You know by now if it needs to be a football field. You'll know by now that depending on the dog or the squirrel or the trigger, that sometimes that distance varies. You know these things. Okay. So distance, safety, but spelled correctly. Okay. So giving them a sense of safety. So not surprising them, not allowing your dog to be surprised either by the trigger or by you. So a really easy example of this would be me going down for a walk the other day. And I wasn't expecting the elevator to open, and out pops this giant dog. And I made several very loud, not great sounds. And Logan was like, "Oh my goodness." And I was like, "Okay, that wasn't good." Right? He hadn't reacted. So giving them a sense of safety. Don't let things surprise them, including you. Okay. Predictability. So this is where the patterns come into place. So if you've taught your dog the cue that goes with that game, and the cue is your movement, the cue is the word that you use. If you've taught them that and taught them that correctly, used it correctly, they get the sense that she said turn, I know what we're doing. Tugging on the leash doesn't give them predictability. Tugging on the leash is, I don't, pulling and getting frustrated, but it's not predictable. In fact, maybe the only thing that it can predict would be for you to know that your dog is going to have an outburst, right? So giving them predictability, structure, pattern, and predictability. And I think that you guys would all agree that when you have predictability, when you know what's about to happen as human beings, you feel safer. Right? When you know what's expected, when you know what's going to happen in the next step, you feel more comfortable, you feel safer. After providing that with the predictability, or in the process of providing that with predictability, you are rewarding them. You are reinforcing their engagement with you. You're reinforcing them by having fun. You're reinforcing them by giving them treats, right? You're reinforcing the behavior of playing the game. And then you want to make sure you have recovery. Recovery isn't just after the incident happens, right? Just because you think your dog is fine and you've moved on, you may find that's not the case. Or now that you guys know about trigger stacking, you're like, wow, okay, there were 3 outbursts on that walk. The next thing I need to do, maybe when I bring my dog inside, is give them something that helps them decompress. Okay. And maybe, because we talked about doing an assessment, maybe when you're like, oh, it's time for the afternoon walk, maybe that walk is shorter because you're still giving them recovery time. And so we're speeding through what are your training plan components. So some people will say, well, how do you fit all that in? Like, we've learned 4 things, like that's a lot of stuff. How do I practice it? What do I build into it? And so your goal, reducing the frequency and severity of your dog's outbursts, basically has 4 pillars to it. So you want to help your dog build confidence in low stress environments. That's where you start training. That's why you start training at home. You avoid situations where your dog cannot be successful. And so we've talked about that in terms of the eager greeter leash greetings, right? Letting your eager greeter greet other dogs who may not really be into it, or maybe they are, but letting your dog be that eager greeter that gets frustrated and gets, all out of sorts when they don't get to say hello. So letting them do that over and over and over again means that they have a far less likelihood of being successful because we continue to put them in that situation, right? For fearful dogs, it would be putting them into situations where you would expect them to be able to get through it and they can't. I'm not saying avoid other dogs forever. I'm saying if you're not going to avoid other dogs so that they can't stop rehearsing that behavior, there's no way it can get better, right? Because they're over threshold. They're doing what they have learned to do. They're responding to their emotions because we keep putting them in the same situation. And it's really hard to swallow for some people for a lot of people in the beginning, where I say, stop walking your dog because you're not making it better. You're making it worse. Okay. It doesn't mean that your dog is going to become like a couch potato and never move. Right. You can do, as you've noticed with these games and other things that you can do at home, inside, you can fulfill their needs in all kinds of ways. Sniffing has a higher respiration rate than running. There's all kinds of things that you can do to give your dogs that stimulation and that exercise that don't involve putting them in situations where they can't be successful. And then on your side, it's practicing to increase your skills and your confidence so that things like a whiplash turn become second nature. Right? Here we go. We're going. Right? All you need is a couple of skills that you feel comfortable with and know how to apply them. So let's bring that into the train box, the blue box. Okay. So choosing 2 or 3 games to play with your dog in no to low trigger settings. First setting is going to be at home. Today and yesterday, so we've got 4. So you could take 4 of those games. You could take 4 of your dog's other games. Tug, trade, on a platform, whatever else it is that they enjoy. Play those games, mix it up with these games so that your dogs are having fun. A, you get a workout. B, you get your training done. Okay. And incorporate fun into your routines. A lot of people are surprised, but in my reactivity program, there is no obedience. Because if obedience, we're going to mute everybody. 1 second. All right, everybody is muted. Okay, if obedience solved reactivity, you guys wouldn't be here. If sitting solved reactivity, you wouldn't be here, right? So drills like stay, down, place, all that, when your dogs are having an outburst, that's not solving, it's not solving your problem, right? So all of the reactivity training that I do is games. Teach your dogs games that you can use and that they then look for, right? Gradually, as you start to incorporate more of these things into your training, it doesn't have to be a verbal cue, right? I'm teaching a puppy right now that if the leash is taut, turn around. The minute you hit that leash taut, turn around, right? You can teach them things like that instead of you always having, so you start to use your equipment and the environment as your cues. Previous class this evening, we were doing a little bit of fitness stuff. And it can be something like, if I teach you how to put your paws on, or I teach you how to station on an object, stool, whatever. Then I'm out in the park and there's a stump and I need to park my dog somewhere. Station. And they're like, oh, I don't know what to do. It's much more fun than you guys trying to haul your dogs through a park, right? Give them something else to do that's engaging with you so that they're like, I know what to do. We're playing this game. I don't have to worry about the other thing anymore. Okay. When you're training, you're keeping sessions short. The training sessions that I would do with most of your dogs, if we were learning this, like if I was training your dogs, would probably be about as long as we did today. 3 to 5 minutes tops per activity. That's it. If your dogs are younger, it's shorter. If your dogs are older, it's shorter. Okay. If your dogs are frustrated, it's going to be shorter. If your dogs have mobility issues, it's going to be shorter. Right. You guys probably follow other trainers on Instagram and you'll see trainers like training for a minute or 5 minutes or something like that, or doing a very long sequence. But those dogs have, been a lot of times been like born training, right? They do it every day, all the time. And so they've built up that endurance, just like in sports, right? In the beginning, you're keeping it short. The other reason that we're keeping it short is because you don't want to frustrate your dogs. Right. So if they're getting frustrated, then it's no longer fun. And you try it outside and they're going to be like, last time we did this, it sucked. I'm not doing this. Right. We need to keep it something that's engaging that they want to do. And it's simple. Right. So have fun with them. A lot of times people are like, training is so serious, but it doesn't have to be. Okay. De-stress ties in with confidence in some cases, reducing exposure to triggers. That might be noise. It might be other dogs. So it's definitely going to be other dogs. It is going to be that Halloween doorbell. If you are here today and you have dogs that are reactive, I can guarantee you that the more times that doorbell rings, the more stressed out your dog is going to be. And the next day, when you try to take them for a nice, calm, collected walk, it's going to be harder. Okay. So reducing their exposure to triggers whenever you can. If you know that something, kind of like what we do with people, if you know that something really stresses out somebody that you care about, you try not to let it happen. And if it does, you try to do something to make them feel better. Right? Prioritizing decompression and rest for your dogs. Dogs need more rest than we actually think. The average dog is sleeping 16, 18 hours a day. And it seems like a lot to us, but that's how they sleep. And they don't necessarily sleep 16 hours straight, obviously, but they're getting pockets of sleep in those 16 and 18 hours. They're not like us. They lie down and they sleep with us, but during the day, the rest of that time is kind of awake, asleep, awake, asleep. And that rest and that need for rest is one of the reasons that during COVID, everybody thought their dogs went crazy. Because when we were all out of the house and working, if your dog was comfortable being alone, they were asleep. And then all of a sudden, everybody is home and your dog is on and they are awake and there's more to track and there's more noises and there's more triggers and there's more stuff happening and I don't know what to do. And you got a lot of dogs where I was able to say, just let your dog, quiet room, sleep. And we all know how sleep impacts us when it comes to staying calm, it comes to being stressed out. So if your dog is only getting like a third of that because everybody's home, you're going to have problems. Okay. Don't train on days when you're tired or your dog is stressed. So certainly training with me is if you come home and you've had a bad day and you have a training plan that says do this on Wednesday, stop. You don't do it. Okay, because if you're already frustrated, if you're already stressed out, if you're not going to have fun, don't do it. Okay. If you can manage to do something fun for 3 minutes, great, do that. It's better than trying to squeeze it all in because you think you're trying to, do some check boxes. Nobody's having fun and your dog isn't actually going to learn. Okay. And if your dog is stressed out, don't train. Don't come back from a trigger-filled walk and go, that didn't work when we were outside. So now I'm going to make sure we do it and practice. Like, don't do that. All right. Let yourself off the hook. Give your dog some fun. Let them relax. Try again another day. Okay. And the last thing, and I actually got a couple of notes from people over the last 3 days, is take care of yourself. That whole, your cup can't, what is it? You can't give to others if your cup is empty. I think something like that. That's the phrase, right? So reactive dogs can be a lot. You probably spend more time thinking about your reactive dog than people spend thinking about their super relaxed dog who's just kind of there, because you're always wondering if they're going to be triggered. You're always wondering what's going to happen when you go out the door. You're always wondering if they're going to bark at somebody. They're going to chase children. Give yourself a break. If one of the goals, and most of you shared this, was that you wanted to enjoy walks, you can go for a walk without your dog. It's lovely. I go out with all kinds of dogs. There are some days where I'm like, oh, I can walk by myself. All right. Because a lot of people don't enjoy walks anymore because they're dealing with their reactive dogs. So as part of your training plan, make sure there's time in there for yourself. If you've got 2 dogs and one of them is reactive or they feed off each other, I know it takes a lot more time. You're walking them separately because they're going to feed off each other and it's not going to get better, right? So you're walking them separately, but the walks are going to be shorter. The shorter your walks are, the fewer triggers your dogs are going to have. Okay. That's probably the hardest part for people. Walk my dog less. Yes. Walk them less, fulfill their movement needs in other ways that don't involve being triggered. I was working with a client in not the last class, but the previous class, and their previous trainer had told them to take their reactive dog to the dog park because then they were off leash and they were going to be able to run around. And then on top of that, play fetch for about 40 minutes and take them for 3 walks a day. Do you have any guesses about what happened? with that dog. So the dog park, yeah, it was having a great time at the dog park. It was the only time that it was sort of out and loose, and it was having a fantastic time. There is zero relaxation in a dog park. So they would go in, their dog would be amped up, get super excited while playing. It had a really good time, right? But like got super excited while playing, got really, really frustrated when it was time to leave the dog park, then went out for 3 walks a day and saw dogs on a leash that it couldn't say hello to because you're not supposed to say hello to on-leash dogs. Right? And then 40 minutes of fetch. There was nothing in that training plan that involved bringing their dog's level of frustration or energy or calmness into the equation. It was all about energy, energy outlet, energy outlet, energy outlet. Think of times when you have slid into bed and you are bone tired, you're exhausted. That's not calm, right? Your body can be exhausted and your mind can still be worrying, right? I'm not a huge fan of a tired dog is a good dog. Nope. Tired dog is just a tired dog. It doesn't mean that they've exercised their brain. Their body is tired. Maybe, if you're lucky. But calmness and well-being has not entered the equation at all. I'm not saying don't play fetch with your dog. I'm not saying don't bring your dog to the dog park unless you know your dog is good at the dog park. But I am saying that focusing on physical activity to try and solve reactivity is not the way. I'm also saying that there are other ways to get your dogs to be fulfilled, to get their brains working, and not teaching them to be adrenaline junkies. There's a couple of you here who have high energy dogs. And you see a lot of those breeds, people are like, that breed is crazy. Aussies is a really good example. Collies, shepherds, all of those things that we think of really, I mean, all of our dogs, terriers, whatever it is, right? So high drivey dogs. If that's all your dogs do is engage in high drivey activities, then you never actually have a dog that learns to relax. And if you tie that into reactivity, it's a little bit of a problem. So balancing things in terms of training and making your training plan is not just training, but it is about training yourself to be able to see a more holistic picture for your dogs. Okay. So what might that look like over a given week? And then we're going to move into like the other topic. So in a given week, it might look like playing some games inside, playing tug in the backyard if you have one. It might be some cooperative care stuff where you're teaching your dog, this is a good example, you're teaching your dog to like appreciate being handled or participate. It might look like doing 5 nose targets while you're walking down the hallway. How many of you, your dogs follow you when you go down the hallway? Yep. Okay, use it. Nose target, nose target, nose target, nose target as they move. If you don't know what a nose target is, it's when you hold your hand out and the dog goes boop. Okay, we call that a nose target. Boop, treat, boop, treat, boop, treat. Then you've got 5. Okay. Standing at your door before you go out for a walk. Up, down, up, down, up, down. Done. Go outside. Up, down, up, down, up, down. That's done. Okay. Play your whiplash turn games in the backyard before you go for a walk, maybe. Practice it a few times when you're on your walk. Right? I'm just using the 4 plus the nose target, 4 examples, so 5, of things that we've talked about in class. If you were training longer with me and you had more things, or if there's other things that your dog likes to do, like some tricks, spin, stand in the middle, that kind of stuff, work those in to training. 5 repeats, do 3 things a day. That's a light training day, but it's what most people can build in to their daily routine. Thumbs up on the screen if that sounds a lot more doable than me saying train your dogs for 40 minutes every day. I don't train my dog for 40 minutes every day. He's been training with me since like the minute he came home, but we don't do 40 minutes every day. In fact, he hasn't been feeling well, so we haven't done anything in 2 weeks until today, right? And it's fine. Okay. Okay. All right. I'm going to do a little bit of questions, and then I really want to tell you guys about sort of where you might take this next if you are going to choose to train with me. And if you're not, I can always connect you to other people. Okay. Don't yell at the cat. So don't yell at the cat. No, don't yell at the cat. Try not to yell at the cat. I suspended walking until, yes, that is Fred. That is perfect. If your dog, and I don't know your dog's name, if your dog isn't into food, that's okay. But what you did suspending walking until you felt you could deal with the outburst better so that you're not getting super frustrated is perfect. That is the perfect thing to do. If your dog has had, some of your dogs are really, really reactive, and you've had a couple of really bad days, suspend walking. Do something like do a safari. Do something that you enjoy doing with your dog so that they're not just a source of frustration. Hands up if you have found your dog to be just a pure source of frustration at any given time. Okay. Do something else. Right. Do something else with them. Okay. I've already decided to sit outside and hand out candy to avoid the doorbell ring. I wish everybody would do that. If you're doling out candy this holiday and you have a reactive dog, sit outside, bundle up, sit outside, dole out the candy. Okay. If you don't and you decide for knocking and doorbell ringing, set your expectations for your dog accordingly. So much pressure from people with non-reactive dogs who think I should do that. Non-reactive dog people are going to tell reactive dog people to go to the dog park until they see that reactive dog at the dog park, and then they don't want you there anymore. Okay. Judgment from other people is definitely a thing that you experience when you have a reactive dog. I never actually thought I would be the dog trainer that had a reactive dog. That wasn't part of my plan. But it happens. And sometimes advocating for your dog can help you feel better. It's my dog. I actually don't care. Especially as a professional, there are very few people that I'm going to take suggestions from. Other trainers that I respect, yes. Everybody else, nope. The reason that dog parks, so there's three things about dog parks scare me. They scare me too. I have not set foot in a dog park in 15 years, and I don't intend to change that. I stopped the dog park when I noticed that Ruby was so stimulated. Okay, so one of the reasons that dog parks are not great, and I'm not talking about going to your backyard or someone else's backyard with dogs that your dog, that you know your dog is comfortable with. A dog park is the public park, right, where everybody unvetted can bring their dog in. 3/4 of the people are drinking their coffee or on their floor. The other quarter, I don't know what they're doing. Very few people at the dog park understand enough about behavior to really know what's going on, right? What you have is a bunch of dogs who have not had their needs fulfilled in any other way. So they haven't sat here and talked about how else to meet your dog's needs. And it is their one outlet, because people who go to the dog park once a week probably go to the dog park a couple times a month, or, multiple times a week, are people who bring their dog to the dog park to let them get energy out. Okay, yes, they're domesticated animals, but you guys have seen dog parks, right? There's usually groups of dogs chasing other groups of dogs. There's going to be dogs that enjoy the chase. There's going to be dogs that don't enjoy the chase. There's going to be dogs apparently that bite people, and people bite other dogs, and people still bring them to the dog park. And no human is going to be able to run after a dog fast enough to prevent something from happening. Right? You have socially awkward dogs, because people who have leash reactive dogs are like, my dog is so much better when they're off leash. Well, we all know why, right? So they bring them to the dog park to get that energy out. And Susan said it perfectly. You start going to the dog park and your dog is like super excited. They get way overstimulated, and then you're like, okay, let's go. Right? There is nothing that it's very rare that dogs learn to be better behaved when they're running at top speed around other dogs. You have some dogs that have their training down pat, right? Dogs that have, and it's not that It's not that people who don't have this are any better or any less. It has nothing to do with that. There are just some people whose time, energy, dog's personality, disposition, genetics, environment, etc., allow them or have created for them a situation where their dog can be romping with other dogs and they can go, come, and their dog comes running. Some dogs you can do that with, some dogs you can't. Some dogs you can do that with sometimes, and other times you can't. Okay. Dog parks scare me. We went to a dog park with my previous dog and we were kind of watching things happening, but we were on the outside. I'd actually gone in to the dog park yet. My previous dog was 15 pounds. And a black lab was coming out of the dog park, and I had watched this dog kind of come out of the dog park, and he was just amped. Now, I had the kind of dog where I knew that if he was cornered, he was not going to be happy. So we were standing like away. This dog got out of the first, you know how most dog parks have like a double gate? So he got out of the first one. He wasn't yet leashed. He got out of the second one, and he ran my dog pretty much right into the fence. Most of your dogs, including mine, if they're cornered, are going to growl. So my little white fluffy dog growled at a black lab. $6,000 and 8 months of recovery later, I now had a reactive dog. I'm smiling, but it's not funny. It was terrible. Like, it was really, really terrible. He got punctured in several places. He got punctured and then like torn underneath the puncture mark. So even if it just looked like a hole, there was like, it was terrible. I don't go to dog parks. Say I don't like them. I don't like people to go to them. And I just about have a coronary every time somebody tells me they're taking their new puppy to be socialized at the dog park. Socialization means your dogs are doing it before they're 16 weeks old. After that, it's no longer socialization. It's just exposure. And the reason for that is your dog's core socialization, and when their brains are developing, it pretty much tapers off after 16 weeks. Socialization is keeping experiences positive so that your dog has a positive impression of the world around them and that they feel safe so that they're not nervous. Dog parks don't do that for puppies. At the best of times, it teaches them how to play like crazy, but not necessarily appropriately. Okay. Bringing dogs to the, no, scroll. Sorry, guys, catching up. I hit the button. Whoo. Okay. I ignore what people tell me because they know nothing. Hopefully you're not ignoring too much of what I'm telling you, but if I get a chance to buy you a coffee later, that works too. Yeah, but unsolicited advice can be pretty frustrating. I've had lots of people, and they don't know who I am. I'm doing an up and down game because there's a cluster of squirrels playing. I don't know that Logan's going to be able to ignore 5 squirrels running across the road, but I know that I can get him to focus on me, so I'll be playing a game. And I had somebody pass by me and go, you should just yank on his harness and then he'd learn. Nobody asked you. Like, just keep moving. Nobody asked you. But people do it all the time. All the time. Unsolicited advice. And so Linda is perfect. You just thank people for their input. Sometimes I'm not as nice as that. I just don't answer. And then ask them next time only to offer advice if and when asked. And yeah, parents don't like people to give them advice on their kids, right? So sometimes you can say thanks. And that's usually it for me. I might not even say thanks. I don't care. I don't, just keep going. But if you're working with a trainer, or if you've gotten advice that you trust, or if your goal is just keeping your dog safe and under threshold, who cares what anybody else has to say? They're not living with your dog. Matter. But de-stress and taking care of yourself is part of being able to handle what feels like constant criticism when you don't have a happy-go-lucky lab all the time, right? And lots of labs are reactive too. Okay. How do we know when they're ready to go out for walks again? It depends on each of your dog, and so I'm not really going to give a blanket answer for that. That depends on their training and where you're at with your dog. Okay. Magnet hand with a small dog that doesn't reach past the calf is not to do a magnet hand because your dog is too far down. Okay. There's other tips and tricks. I know that there's like tiny little dogs. And you are probably back from answering the door now. Maybe not. Working with the Chihuahua, at least for the beginning of training, doesn't have to be, it's not all the time. It's not something I expect people to do all the time. But working with a Chihuahua when you're trying to maybe get a whole lot of reinforcement in really, really quickly during training, the training phase of things, and eventually you can phase it out, would be to use a spoon that's been smeared with something that you can just drop down by your leg, and they get to lick and you bring it back up, stick it in your pocket, keep going. Right? That's in training. It's not necessarily practical for life, but it helps when you're trying to do training stuff. Evie, I'm sorry that your sweetie got ganged up and attacked on 4 dogs at daycare. Yeah, so showing weakness and whining, crying, and pacing. If people will excuse my language, your dog changed the energy in the room is BS. Your dog might have changed the energy in the room, but the daycare staff, it is their responsibility to know what is happening in the dynamic of the dogs in the room. Right? That's their job. Accidents happen at daycare, it can happen, but blaming the dog who got attacked, or even blaming the dogs who did the attacking, there's nothing is solved by that, right? When you have a group of dogs, so Hannah, to your question, when you have a group of dogs that are playing together high energy all the time, it can be the same detriment as bringing them to the dog park, not from an injury perspective, okay, but from a behavior perspective. So you will find a lot of times, or I have found at least quite a few times, and this is not all dogs, but for some dogs that spend their days playing at daycare, and some daycares don't include structured rest. Like I have a list, if I was going to hire a daycare, I would have a structured list of things that I would be looking for. It's the same things that I put into place when dogs are staying with me. I think there's 2 dogs here that have stayed with me, Yuka's dogs and Catherine and Val's dog. There's a structure. It shouldn't be play all day. Right? A lot of the time you are getting play all day just because that's the economics of resourcing and staff and qualifications. But if a dog spends their day playing all day, you could have a reasonable expectation that when they see other dogs, their expectation is to be able to access that dog, and then you get frustration. Right? Because the leash introduces resistance and a barrier to accessing dogs, and they're used to being able to do that all day. So I like daycares, and we're gonna kind of power through. I like daycares that have play and rest, like structured rest. I like daycares where they put dogs into group by not just size and age, but by play temperament. Right? Logan was at daycare for a little while, not a very long time, just a little while, just to get a little bit of stuff in, and he is the kind of dog that I knew would get way too rowdy with the big dogs, and that's not the mannerisms that I wanted. I wanted him to learn how to temper his play, so he actually got in with the little dogs. Right? Edgar would get chased at the dog park, and then he'd end up getting, yeah. So that's not, if your dog is uncomfortable, they're going to show you. I'm showing this to my father-in-law. Can you bring a dog back from reactivity, or is it a lifelong project? It depends on your dog. There's a whole bunch of things, components to reactivity that isn't just the dogs on the street. It's personality, it's disposition, it's genetics. And by genetics, I don't mean one breed more than the other. Okay. What I do mean is, was mommy dog anxious? Did mommy dog have a stressful experience during her pregnancy? Because we know that with people, right? Is the temperament in the line of the dog where it came from? And a lot of chances with rescue, we don't know, right? It's all kinds of things. So it depends. Some dogs, their reactivity is developed relatively recently, and we can, do things sometimes faster, but it depends. I would say that if you know you have a reactive dog and you guys are all invested in your dog's well-being, or you wouldn't be here, it becomes not a lifelong project, but it's a different way of engaging with your dog, right? It becomes more of you note when they're stressed out and you adjust yourself accordingly, right? So not a lifelong project is like in homework, but it can vary, right? I'm just as afraid of the neighbor's dogs I'm just as afraid of neighborhood dogs that are in the front yards off leash. That like terrifies me. because you don't know when they're there half the time. There's not a lot that you can do. There's not a lot that you can do about that. You want to get your whiplash turns down pat. You want to get your dogs used to moving with you really, really quickly. But there are some other things that you can do. I'm not going to talk about them right now. They're not training things. But if you guys got the email and I said to like drop into my Facebook group, you guys can do that and we'll continue periodically some discussions. Okay. But there's other stuff you can do. It's more of a preparedness thing. Situation, unable to maintain distance. She will not move. She will not whatever. We're always going to be in that. So in that moment, you're going to do the best you can. She has an outburst. That's fine, right? It's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that your training failed. It's fine. Is do what you're doing. Tight, but happy, right? You're going to keep that traffic handle tight, but you're not going to be hauling back past a certain point. I know it's hard. And then you're going to focus, like I had on the slide, you're going to focus on the decompression, the reward, and the recovery. Okay. Good, Evie. I'm glad he's not going back, right? Depending, it might be a good time to try the up and down game if you're stuck, but she might not take treats, right? All right. Pause for questions. We're going to come back to questions after. Are you guys comfortable if I tell you a little bit about the reactivity program? All right. So you have I have one grad here. I think the other one had to drop. So Roaring to Relax is my 10-week program. It's designed for reactive dogs, quotation marks, excited or afraid. Okay. Of all ages who need help to process their excitement, their fear, or frustration. We do spend a lot of time on leash reactivity, but we also talk about noise sensitivity. We talk about visitor challenges. We might talk about squirrels and other sort of scenarios that you would encounter when you have a reactive dog. It's 10 weeks, much like the format of this, except it also includes a couple of other things, which I'll talk to you about in a minute. So each session will have education pieces. I don't know. Catherine's going to say I'm wrong. I talk a lot in these things, right? But the beginning of it's going to be education for you. And then there's your homework, and we'll talk about your homework. And then there's the training. So there's always hands-on training where you guys are getting the foundation of a specific technique, game, skill, leash handling, and that kind of stuff. You're getting that same instruction as you guys did today, but probably a little bit more intense and a little bit more personalized because there's generally fewer of you. So it's a little bit more concentrated, right? The format of the program, and it starts on Tuesday, November the 14th at 7 p.m. Eastern. So I know for some of you, the time zone is a little bit wonky, but that's sort of a central time for most people, 7 p.m. Eastern. And it's every Tuesday for 10 weeks. What we focus on building with you guys is a reactivity toolkit. This is just what's on the screen in words is just the highlight. Did I say 14th? Tuesday, November the 15th. Fix that slide. The 14th is Logan's birthday, so no, don't teach on that day. In the blue boxes are just the highlights. So we talk about more about leash skills, different leash maneuvers for safety. Some of you have dogs that redirect to you. You start touching that leash, they might turn around and bite you. We start working on that defensive handling. Long line handling. So once again, longer than 6 feet. What does that mean? How do you work with it safely? Behavior adjustment therapy is done using a long line and teaching your dog to make different choices in very carefully controlled situations so that they can learn with enough distance that they're actually able to make choices on their own based on a dog's natural inclination of how they diffuse stress for themselves instead of you having to do it all the time. Okay. We do strategies and games. You'll see a couple of games listed here, but that's not all of them. Engagement like tricks and recall and middle, because training shouldn't all be about drills. There needs to be some fun. Okay, so we do a lot of that. Power up to wind down, to things you're going to teach your dogs to wind down and relax. And every week there's a goal for you guys. Okay. Decompression also includes you guys. Enrichment is not just give your dog a Kong. I have a pet peeve where people like, yes, I gave my dog enrichment. I gave them a Kong. So the Kong is like the object that delivers that enrichment, but enrichment is actually meeting your dog's needs. So experiences that you give them to enrich their lives isn't necessarily a food toy. Counter conditioning, how you apply. We're going to talk about the strategy and the science behind counter conditioning. And the reason that we are counter conditioning and not desensitizing. So a lot of people are like, I need to desensitize my dogs to other dogs. No, your dog is already sensitized. That's why you're here. Counter conditioning is teaching your dog a new association. Your dogs are past the point where they're going to be able to ignore something. And you can't desensitize a dog until you've actually turned off that trigger, like turned off that input so they don't have it to react to. Okay. And then human super skills. So expanding your knowledge and understanding, improving your training mechanics, learning to train using shaping. Shaping is a technique for training that is different from luring. Right? A lot of us learn to train our dogs by using a treat and getting them to move. Shaping is deciding on a behavior and breaking it down in tiny steps so that your dogs choose to do that behavior instead of blindly following food. And the reason you want to learn that, if you want to sort of improve some things, is that you want dogs that learn to make choices as opposed to react. So you start training them in that way, they start to be able to use their brains a little bit differently. You get really, really good at observing things. You get really good at observing things like their ears, their eyes, their change of breath, what you're going to do. And then strategies and motivators, how you apply all of these things to your strategy. And I can't list all of those things. So there are 80 other topics that we cover over the 10 weeks, right? So touch sensitivity, therapy for different dogs. I don't know, there's tons. Like there's just like tons and tons and tons. If you guys are interested, I can give you that full list, but there's like 80 other topics about dog behavior, about how, like we talked a tiny bit about stress and wellness, but how you guys can take that stuff down. For dogs that are super, super stressed, how you start to realize changes in their coat patterns. You don't necessarily realize all of those things, right? You're paying attention to those things as you're training. So it's super in depth. It's not light. The format is 90-minute orientation. Okay, so getting you guys ready to get started. There's 9 weekly 1-hour virtual classes, but in all of those classes, you are working. You get 2 private coaching sessions and you can use them whenever you like, right? So some people choose to use them during the program because they're stuck. Some people choose to leave them until after the program because they're just working through things and then they want to save them out and pace them out for after. That's fine. Once you've graduated 5 weeks after graduation, so actually the next batch is going to have theirs soon, 5 weeks after graduation, we do another check-in because often I find that when you're in the intensive program, everybody's good and they keep moving. And then as soon as it's over, you're good for a bit and then life happens and things start to slide. So I like to bring everybody back to kind of make sure that we are still all on the same page. You might say, if you can't see my dog, how are you going to give us feedback? So if you were in an in-person class, typically you would have the class, you would go away and you would practice ideally, and then you would come back to class the next week and you wouldn't really get any feedback in between. The nice thing about this is I give you guys homework. Blizzard and Claire and Meadow are familiar with this. So you're going to learn a thing and then I'm going to say, practice at home, send me a video or post it on the Facebook page. Send me a video so that I can give you progress notes so that you can progress in between the weeks. And that way, even though it is a group class, you're not waiting for everyone to catch up to you. You're not waiting or feeling behind or feeling like you're ahead. You get to move forward during the week based on wherever you're at. But I need to be able to see videos to give you guys that feedback. Okay. We've done video, but live video conferencing with Claire. We've done it with stressful arrival of visitors. Right. I don't need to be there. There's other visitors that come into her home that are far more important than I am, but you can coach people without adding extra pressure to your dog, right? You get a workbook so that you have in-depth handouts, checklists, and worksheets to keep you on track. You also get access to client portal. It's lifetime access, and I don't mean lifetime as in like my lifetime, but or your lifetime, but the lifetime for how long I offer this program. You'll have access to that, where basically every single skill or game or thing that we teach has a tutorial video. So once you're done class, if 2 days later you're like, I'm not sure what she said, you can go back and watch that and you'll know exactly what to do. All right. And you get to keep access to that client portal for as long as I'm offering the program. And there are probably over 100 videos in there. You get to be part of that Roaring to Relax Facebook community. All of my students are in there when they're taking the program. They get to stay there when they're graduated, and nobody has left yet. I like that because you get to be, I'm not alone, right? It gives you that same feeling as you got here where you heard people chiming in. The other nice thing is you get to see other people's training videos. So you get to see what progression looks like, or you get to see people struggle the same as you are, and that makes you feel better. Either way. You get support via text from me for the duration of your program. You have a question, you text it to me, I will answer it. Okay. And you get to hang out with me every week. So hopefully that's a good time. Okay. So regularly tuition for that is $880. For the first 15 people that register, it's $95 off. There is the option to pay in installments. If you choose to do that, email me. Don't register online because there isn't a coupon code for that. Okay. The other value add that you'll get is I have a training membership. There are a lot of people who want to continue training, but they don't necessarily want class. They don't want a class every week. They can't commit to a class every week, but you have a reactive dog and you want to be doing more with them, especially during the winter. So grads of this program get to participate in my training membership where we do all kinds of things. 6 o'clock was a fitness class. I'm hoping to have a vet come in and talk about things that you can use in your household, in your pantry to help sustain your pet, wellness and things like that. We're also going to be doing a whole series in January on cooperative care. So if you have a dog that is fussy about being handled at the vet or the groomer or teeth brushing or eye drops or things like that, we're going to be working through each of those. So you get 2 months free for that as well. Okay. So there's going to be an email that comes out that tells you guys a little bit more about the program where you can find the information. Yeah, and we get to hang out with Mallory too. You guys don't know Mallory. Mallory graduated last year, and she loved it so much that she wants to come back and help you guys learn too. So you get 2 people coaching you along, which is fantastic. So there's going to be an email, and you'll have the information, or you go to fearlesstales.com, training for reactive dogs, and you can find it there. Again, if you're going to pay by installments, email me. Okay, read the details there and then email me. Any preference to the whole family or one parent? I actually like it if you can get as many people as possible sitting in front of the camera on Tuesdays at 7 because they get to hear it with me. You don't need to nag as much. You're not trying to like disseminate endless pieces of information, right? They can get it from the source. If they can't sit in front of it, for an hour on Tuesdays, then you have the video vault, but it is much harder to get people to watch something, right? So typically I will say the whole family can participate in the lecture piece. When it comes to the times where we're doing training sessions, which I aim for is roughly half, so about a half an hour every time, is you're going to work with generally one person per class, right? So one person is going to be engaged in the dog and practicing. Everybody else can practice in between, and you can send me videos of anybody else practicing. And then the next class, it can be somebody different, but typically you're going to choose one person as that primary trainer in class so that your dog isn't confused, right? Because different people are going to have different levels of proficiency with the training that they're doing. Okay. If you can't join November 15th, the next one after that, I'm undecided. So it depends. Depends on my schedule, depends on demand. Is there a limited number of participants? The biggest group that I like to do myself before Mallory joined was about 15. with having someone to coach you guys, I might be able to add a little bit more. If the response is as overwhelming as the response was to this workshop, which I want to thank everybody for coming to, I was expecting some numbers. I wasn't expecting, almost 100 people on the first 2 days. And I certainly wasn't expecting as many people as showed up to the last day. That's not typically how multi-day webinars go, right? Usually your drop off is pretty. If you can't join the next one, shoot me an email and I'll put you on a wait list. If you're one of the first 15 people to sign up, the discount applies because I'm going to send you an email with an actual discount code to put in. Okay, so you'll have a discount code to use. If there are more people that want to join, but not too many people that I have to move it to a couple of months, I might consider doing it in a bit of a different format where there's going to be, lectures streamed live. And then I would add another training session in there so that people can get their training pieces in, right? I like things to be personalized. So we spend the first few weeks, everybody learning the same foundation activities. You get personalized feedback if you send me videos, okay? And then once you've all basically learned some of that foundation, then we start to branch out for the second half. And we branch out because some people will say, my priority is reactivity in the house. Somebody else will say, my priority is reactivity on the street. Some people will say, I really just want to work on visitors, right? So even though you're using the same techniques, when you come together for class, you guys all get to be working on some different things. And it's a lot of fun because even if your priorities are different, you get to see how it looks for other people. And then chances are it might not be your primary focus, but you're going to be focusing on that in a different place. Can we join for the cooperative care portion? So right now the cooperative care portion is only open to Roaring to Relax students. And the rationale for me for that is that people who have already graduated with me have sort of a baseline of understanding about consent and body language and things like that. So it's not a from scratch. I might consider adding an option where if you're brand new to cooperative care, and if I'm being honest, most people are brand new to cooperative care, where you'd be able to join without doing the program, but it really is intended for people who have already have a certain proficiency and a certain knowledge set. Undecided, but for now, I'll keep that in mind. Okay. Will there be discount codes for private packages too? Generally not. Okay. So I know that some people would really prefer private, but I can tell you that having me one-on-one doing this with you is a lot more expensive. And you're going to be paying for a lot of my talk time at a higher rate. Right? It's more cost effective for people to join the group program, get your knowledge, get the foundations, take advantage of the privates that are offered at a seriously discounted rate while in the group program. And then if you need extra help afterwards, add that. Most of the time with the amount of feedback you get, and if Mallory is comfortable, or Yuka or Catherine, I won't put individuals on the spot, if you want to talk about your experience with sort of online in a group kind of training or feedback that you get from videos, because not all of you have done group, you get more than enough feedback and homework to work on during the week. You don't really want me there with you, right? So you get to move forward as you need to at a rate that's not as expensive for you. I'm going to, if it's okay, if either of the three of them want to talk about their experience in the group, that is awesome. Put your thumbs up if you want to, not if you don't want to, and that's okay. I got a thumbs up from Val. Thank you. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Perfect. Yeah. I think Catherine and I were actually reflecting a couple of days ago on kind of the best way that we came to a realization how far we came kind of with the group class was our longest walk about 6 months ago is now the absolute shortest walk we do. And that was just a realization of how far we've come, and we've done the group classes. And like Tasha said, she does provide a lot of feedback.
Maybe too much
There-
sometimes, but yep.
there's never short. You're never short of words. It's always positive, and there's always things to work on. Um, and there's enough feedback, enough things for us to work on from week to week. And especially the videos were very helpful because we then captured the specific item we were working on right there and then. Sometimes when we're in class or you're going somewhere, you may not actually get the same reaction.
Yeah.
But it just so happens that you take a couple takes and you're like, all right, this is the worst one. So here is the one we want you to take a look at, not our best. So that actually worked out really well, and we found it very helpful to not only train Blizzard but ourselves as much as Blizzard. So
Awesome.
highly recommend.
Thank you. If you guys are in the Facebook, so what Val's talking about in terms of videos is take a video when you're on your walk. It doesn't have to be your homework. Go for a walk, show me a video, right? I'm not saying create the problem and shoot me a video. What I'm saying is, look, we're going for a walk, right? The time to state me a video is not when your dog is having a reaction, but you're like going for a walk and you're like, am I doing this right? What are we seeing? Right. And so there's actually a great example. Mallory has one too, and Blizzard has one where they went to an area where they knew there would be triggers, right? They were playing the games, they were practicing. They sent it over. What would we do differently next time? This is what you would do differently next time. Go and try that. Tape it. Come back. What would we do differently next time? Right? So you're getting that one-on-one feedback, even though you're in a group. Where have I had only one session? You've only had one session with the behaviorist on reactivity and anxiety. I would say that when you're working with the behaviorist, I like people to kind of collaborate a little bit. So I don't want to be doing that in isolation. You can still sign up. And as you're working with the behaviorist, you're going to give me that information. Okay, so if your behaviorist has said the focus should be this, that's what the focus is going to be. And most of the time when I've been working with certified behaviorists, which is a rant I can go on a different day, be really careful, you guys. There are people who call themselves behaviorists, but they're not. I cannot call myself a behaviorist. It's a very specific designation and credential. Okay. A behavior coach, it's fine. A behavior consultant, I use that term sometimes, it's fine. A behaviorist is a very specific thing. A veterinary behaviorist is an even more specific thing, and they're like finding a needle in a haystack. They are really hard to come by. But if you are working with a behaviorist, we want to be doing the training that aligns with them, right? And so a behaviorist might be recommending certain activities, might be not recommending other activities. Behaviorists will be ideally working on your dog from a holistic perspective. So health, diet, rest, the whole 9 yards. And behaviorists and veterinary behaviorists can also talk about medication. Okay. Okay. The sign up through the 10-week program is going to be through the email I sent you because you've clicked too early. So as soon as I send that email, that button is going to be working for you to go through. Okay. And you can't sign up with the button if you don't have the code to get your discount. So don't sign up just yet. Wait till that comes through. Okay. Thank you, Hannah. All right. So that's as much as I kind of want to talk to you guys about. It's not because it's full yet, because it's on hold so that everybody gets the information at the exact same time. All right. So as soon as this is over, I'm going to go back to my other part of my desk, do things, send it to you guys, and then turn it on, right? And that is so that it wasn't filled by public. So I haven't actually announced that registration is open to anybody. You guys get a bit of a head start into tomorrow, but it will go live for everybody tomorrow, but not the discount. So the discount is only going to people who registered for this workshop. Okay. Brooke says she highly recommends Roaring to Relax. She did 2 rounds with Edgar, and she's now part of the monthly membership. So Brooke took course number 1. Once you've taken the course once, you can come back free of charge, practice whatever you want to practice. And she's also joined the membership so that she's doing other stuff too. Okay. Sarah, yes, I saw your other email. I'm not sure. You got some emails and then not the middle email. So we're going to make sure that that gets fixed. And I'm just going to take a picture with my phone. Okay. So that's enough of me talking. You guys have spent 3 evenings with me talking at you, for which I am very grateful. We've had people from Singapore, Japan, Portugal, England, Netherlands. I saw some of the slides kind of with commentary. I didn't know what language it was in, but it's in Dutch, which is really cool. So I want to thank you guys for coming. It's one of the closest times we've finished to time. If you'd like to stay on and ask some questions, feel free. If not, we will wrap it up, but just wait for your email to come out. Okay. All right. Have a good night. Oh, PDF, don't leave, don't go. PDF, 1 second. And I will probably email it. So hold on. So I have the emails of people who were here, so I can get that to you guys. Okay. It is pulling through. Guys should be able to pull it out now. Okay. So the email that's going to come tomorrow will have all of the links for your 3. Somebody asked how long the recordings will be available for, and they'll be available for a year. Okay. Have a great night, guys. Thank you so much. Hop into the Facebook group if you like, and keep your eyes peeled for the email. All right. Have a good night. Thanks, guys. If you're not leaving because you have questions or you want to talk to me, unmute. Okay, a few people are stuck here, so I'm assuming you still want to be here and not that you're. Andrew, if you couldn't find the PDF, scroll up. There should be a link somewhere.
I've got a question.
Lula, yeah.
So Scarlett has a little bit of, like, she doesn't like to meet strange dogs right up in her face. So she definitely has that kind of reactivity. But I find my biggest problem with her is her inability to settle herself down in like if someone comes over or if I try to take her somewhere, which I presume is all a part of the same. She gets herself amped up and she can't
come back down.
She can't come back down. So are there any of these games that would be similarly helpful to sort of refocus her in say an unusual circumstance?
I would probably, I'm actually going to put the screen over here so I can like look directly at you guys because I'm getting like a kink in my neck back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Okay. So that's where things like, and it's less of a game because as you saw, a lot of the games are like high, like.
Yeah, she just gets crazy.
Ones
like,
anyway,
awesome.
Right? Yeah. And we want that when we're in a reactive spot, but then we need to be able to bring them down. So there's things like relaxation protocols. There's mat training, but then you can apply it to different things. And I am actually going to say that a dog that doesn't love other dogs in their face isn't necessarily reactive. They're communicating, but her reaction might be a little bit overblown.
Yeah.
Because she might have a history of like dogs not responding the way they're supposed to. She's probably giving off all kinds of signals. Back off, don't. And then you've got a dog that's like, hi, right?
Yeah.
So bringing her energy down is going to be, I would say you'd still want some games to get out of dodge. But with visitors and bringing her to a different place, there's going to be games about providing her with predictability.
Okay.
And they can be low, right? So some of the ones I teach you can use them to lower. You can also use them to amp up. Most of the time you want to use them to lower. Yeah. And then you're transferring them around it.
Yeah.
Some people are saying they can't find hold on.
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
can't find the thing. I will try and send it again. Okay. It's going through. There are still a whack of people on the call, which is amazing because I guess you want to hear the discussion. But if you're here still because you have other questions or you're looking for the handout, if you have other questions, pop your camera on or just unmute and ask. But does that answer your question, Sheila?
Yeah, I think so. So just
Okay.
look for, so like if I look up like mat training, stuff like that, and just think
Yeah.
about ways of training her to find a place and calm herself down.
In a different way than probably what you're going to find when you look up mat training is an obedience training thing, which is not
Yeah,
what I'm
no,
talking
right.
about. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Problem. Using the phone for the Zoom, yes, you might have a little bit of a challenge. So I've just made a note of your names and I will send that over to you guys. MJ and Andrea, but Andrea, can you tell me what's your last name, Andrea? Okay, you know what? If you are on a phone, email me. If you're on a phone, email me, okay? All right. For anybody else, if you have not unmuted and you're not asking questions and you've got your PDF, I assume there's nothing else that you need right now. So I'm going to end this and wish you guys all a good night in 3, 2, 1. Thanks for coming out, guys. We'll see you again soon. Bye.